And good morning. How you doing? Hi, my name's Ken LaSalle, and for the last few weeks, I've been reading my nonfiction philosophical memoir. I've been writing a lot of novels lately. Climbing Maya. What is success? We're getting into that in Climbing Maya. So sit back, wherever you are, enjoy your video as I put on my reading glasses, because you can't read without reading glasses. By the way, I've got my coffee. Iced coffee. Yum. So, we're getting rid of the glasses that help me see wherever you are. I can't see a thing. And this is the last chapter that I'll be reading in Climbing Maya. And I hope you've enjoyed the readings, and I hope you like them enough to go out and pick up a copy. You can get the audiobook from Audible for free with your membership, with your new membership. Anyway, there we go. I can actually see. I'll be reading I'll be reading chapter 7 today. I'll be reading half of it today, and then the other half later, just because chapter 7 runs rather long, and we don't all want to sit here that long, do we? So let's get started. Chapter 7. I haven't done this in a while. I can barely see a thing. It's always so much fun. The drive from my house to San Diego is about 100 miles. Not too bad considering the speed limit is 65 miles per hour, but who drives the speed limit? Of course, this was Southern California, and traffic was backed up from the time I pulled onto the freeway. Okay, so it would take a while. But I'd done this before many times. When Tim moved to San Diego, it was supposed to return our friendship to a place where we could be in closer contact. The years he'd lived in San Francisco had been tough on our friendship. Tim didn't drive, so the only times he came up to see me were when he could arrange to take the train. Most of the time, though, I drove down there. I hadn't seen Tim in almost a month. And back then, I was still employed. On that occasion, I went specifically to tell him about the problems I'd been having at work. I wanted to drink a little and talk about things. But by the time I entered his house, he was already drunk. Speaking of drinking, he was already drunk, and a drunken Tim is not a particularly pleasant Tim. He has this whole Jekyll and Hyde thing going on, where normally he's very pleasant, a person you want to spend time with, until he drinks. After a few hours at his house, I had only one drink, and he passed out drunk. I felt betrayed, in a way. He wasn't there for me. You can't expect much more than this, Vicky told me before I left, or she had told me before I left. He's not going to be magically sober. I'm going to get rid of this pillow. It interferes. So, he's not going to be magically sober. I know, I replied, a vague way of begging off defeat. But I have to talk to him. Vicky was accepting of that. I think if I was a drunk, she'd beat the hell out of me. We'd talked about Tim's drinking problem many times, and she always reminded me that there was little I could do until he realized he had a problem. You can imagine my surprise to arrive at his house and find Tim sober. I can't drink anymore, he told me, showing me why. At a recent party, an impromptu shindig thrown while his boyfriend was away, Tim had again drunk himself to oblivion. He'd fallen on his dog, Casey, breaking the animal's leg. Now, Casey hobbled around the house in a cast. I'm sorry. No, it's my fault. I have a problem and I need to face it. He lit a cigarette and handed me the pack. His house is U-shaped with a deck on the open side. So when you walk in, you cross a hallway to the deck with the house around you. We sat out there and smoked, making small talk. You want a drink? He asked. Catching himself, he added, non-alcoholic. I have some soda. Sure, I said. He came back out with 2 cans and we talked, joked, and laughed. Finally, I said to him, your drinking problem is part of the reason why I'm here. I'm not going to give you a lecture, don't worry. I put my hands up in surrender. But I've been thinking a lot lately, partly about you. Do you think your drinking problem might be a way of escaping things? What do I have to escape? I had a lot of guesses. You tell me. I have a good job. I'm in a good relationship. We live in a nice house. Incontrovertible assertions. Yes, I drew out with a nod. But you hate your home. Tim had many complaints, not least of which was the constant traffic of airplanes passing directly overhead, punctuating our conversation with artificial pauses, giving us time to light another cigarette or get another soda. After another plane went over, he made a face. I'm not going to discount your relationship. It's probably the only thing that keeps you close to sanity, but the job isn't. I like it. I get to work with some very nice people. I get to work with animals. But it's not what you really want to do, Tim. Silence. And no planes were stopping us from talking. I continued, you wanted to be a writer. And you were a damned good one. You wanted to be an actor, and you were good at that too. You wanted to be a model. You wanted to be on television. I did all those things. But you stopped, and you never went back. When was the last time you wrote anything? Even tried? You've given up on being a model. You're not interested in acting. Why is that? Did you want to stop? Is that what you want? He looked around. No. I'm just saying that may be what's holding you back. Maybe you're drinking because you're trying to get away from... The phone rang, and Tim jumped out of his seat. Be right back, he said, already inside the home. Inside, we could still hear the planes pass over, but all the windows were shut, which helped buffer the noise. He laughed with someone on the phone, and I heard him making vague promises while I settled into a large, puffy chair. The house was well maintained, a beautiful house with beautiful things. On the surface, Tim really had it all. All thanks to his boyfriend, who made a lot of money. If Tim lost his relationship, he would be lost. His boyfriend approached me to help think of ways to get Tim's drinking under control. Neither of us had considered breaking the dog's leg. I forgot I have a thing. A thing? I asked, turning my head up in his direction. I'm supposed to go to a house party. You can come with me if you want. Do you know this person? No. We were supposed to spend the day together. I made it very clear that I had a lot I wanted to talk about with him. But disappointment was familiar when it involved Tim. No, I think I'll just stay here. Are you going to be long? He laughed. Oh, no, I can't. Can you drive me there? It's not far. I did, of course. I figured he'd probably call me when it was over or when he was ready to come home. But I was wrong. He told me as we pulled up in front of the condominium complex, "This'll be perfect. Robin's going to get here in about an hour, and that'll be my excuse to leave." Robin? "She's taking me to the Dave Matthews concert tonight." Tim's excitement, in contrast with the obligation to the party, was palpable. Mine was less so. "You're going to a concert?" "Oh, right, I was supposed to tell you, but I'll be back early and then you and I can hang out." "Oh, the concert should end by 9 and I'll come back straight from there." "Okay." My disappointment solidified. I knew by the tone of my voice. "You're not mad at me, are you?" I took a deep breath. "No. I'll be sober when I get home. I'll only have a couple of beers, especially with what they charge for beer. What is it, $8? I tried to give a smile. "I honestly don't know, Tim." "Okay," he said, getting out of the car. Part of the reason I'd come down to San Diego was because he told me his schedule was free. But he didn't seem to realize that. After he was gone, I drove back to his house, figuring I might find something to eat. It was mid-afternoon. I'd have a while to wait before he returned. My friendship with Tim began during a very different time in my life. It was a time when I thought I knew where I was going and where I'd end up, when success wasn't just low-hanging fruit. It was handed to me. We were in high school, and I was a large fish in a very small pond. I wrote my own ticket when it came to acting and writing. In my journalism class, I wrote a bi-weekly column with no other assignments and was always given good grades. As an actor, I was handed the lead role of every play. Early in my senior year, I'd gone into local theater, and as the school year started, I branched out and served as an assistant director in the first play with our advisor directing. Hi, how you doing? That show was Harvey, the wonderful Mary Chase play that most people remember from the movie that starred James Stewart, or most people don't remember. We casted the play one afternoon after school, student after student filing in for auditions. I sat behind the advisor, and by virtue of her newness to the job and my experience with these actors, told her who to cast. Tim walked in, new to the school, with a calm kindness, unruffled by the audition process. He didn't need to audition. He was the perfect Elwood P. Dowd before he read a word. The play went off without a hitch, and thus our new friendship was born. Only later did I learn that his real talent lay in writing. He put mine to shame. After high school, he joined the Army under the foolish assumption it would give him stories to write. Instead of adventures he could write about, he cleaned tanks in Oklahoma. Some might say that's still a story, but for most young men, it's not a story worth reading, let alone writing. He returned early with a dishonorable discharge. He'd had enough of the military and found his way out through a loophole. This was during a time when gays were not allowed in the military. Don't ask, don't tell. So he told them. When he returned, he dove into his writing voraciously. We even wrote a story together, his attempt to teach me how to write horror stories. But my style infected his, and the finished story, Help, was about a man whose horrible bad luck caused anyone who came near him to meet a gruesome death. Like youth, Tim's dedication to his craft didn't last. His passion was crashed under boulders of disappointment. They say that art is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, and they are correct, but they don't say that the sweat comes mostly from agony, not toil. You need to be able to withstand the pain of so many disappointments, so many heartaches. Not being good enough in your own eyes is only one. That was 20 years ago. Tim then went on to act and appear in television, but nothing lasted. Success was easier to swallow in small bites. He met the man he's with now, and when we met in San Diego, his greatest aspiration was reduced to working part-time in a pet store. Allen Ginsberg wrote, "I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragged through the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix." I sat in Tim's living room and knew what Ginsberg meant, in a way. In the growling tedium of suburban life, of all the talented people I've known in my lifetime, Robert, Richard, Trish, and so on, all abandoned their dreams for the safety of being like everybody else. The difference with Tim was that he shot past being like everyone else and sunk into alcoholism. But perhaps a dog's leg had helped prevent that. I wasn't so sure Casey's leg would make a difference after 9 o'clock turned to 10, and 10 turned to 11, then to midnight, until 2 in the morning. I was struggling to stay awake and watching television powered only by my irritation. Then, Tim returned home, followed by 2 girls, Robin and another. All were very drunk. It was a miracle they made it home. Each carried bags of fast food and made a mess trying to eat it over the kitchen counter. I wasn't very good company, understandably so, I believe. After the girls left, I suggested that we should talk, but within 5 minutes of sitting down in that large puffy chair, Tim was asleep, and I was awake, angry, and wanting a drink. Cheers. Back when I was a Christian, coffee gets in the mustache. Back when I was a Christian, someone once told me that anxiety is a sin against the Lord. Now, there are some words that there are some words that'll stick with you. Anxiety is a sin. How is that possible? Here's the logic. God has a plan. He's planned out everything that'll happen down to the smallest detail. God is all-knowing, all-seeing, and all-powerful. God is also love, or so I've heard. So, he wouldn't plan anything bad for you. Bad things happen when you go off of his plan. A stab in the eyes to free will. To be anxious is to doubt this plan. To doubt God is to commit the same sin as Lucifer. The sin of arrogance. Ipso facto, anxiety is a sin. and in a way that's bound to make you pretty damned anxious, let me tell you. The flaw in this logic, though, is that it's also the greatest cop-out known to man. If the devil made me do it, this is saying God will take care of it. So when this logic was posed to me, my reaction was, then why go to school? Why go to work? If God's taken care of everything, why should we do anything? I confess I was a lazy kid. This goes beyond the theory of random predeterminism. The idea that Vicky and I were born to be together, Megan was meant to get sick, or that Tim is powerless against alcoholism, says God intended us to be married, but only if it's a good marriage, not a bad marriage. A bad marriage would mean that we went off of God's plan. How can anyone live their lives that way? It's a blank check, giving God credit only for the good things, leaving us to take credit for the bad. You get the blame. An invisible and possibly non-existent idea of an all-powerful being gets the credit. That just sounds wrong to me. So futile. A no-win situation. It's probably another reason why I found Christianity so disappointing. There's no sense of ethics, no direction. Thou shalt not kill has been trampled by centuries of Christian wars, from the Crusades to present incursions into the Middle East. The commandments in the 5th chapter of Matthew, to love thine enemies, is so forgotten that I've heard preachers say that it's not in the Bible at all. Blessed are the peacemakers, the meek shall inherit the earth. All dismissed with laughter and disdain, ignored unless it can be used for the interests of politics and economics. And so I read the Bible, and I am called an atheist. Pretty funny, huh? Remembering this lesson of predestiny and assigning blame where blame belongs, I didn't think any Christian text could tell me anything about success. Until I read the Gospel of Thomas. The 113th passage reads, and this is getting us to the end of the reading, and this is the important part. This is the part that you should listen to. His followers said to him, when will the kingdom come? It will not come by watching for it. It will not be said, look, here it is. Or look, there it is. Rather, the Father's kingdom is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it. The kingdom of heaven is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it. This is an important idea for you to consider. Even if you're not Christian, even if you're not religious, even if you're not thinking, for my Republican viewers. We can see the world as war and disaster and famine and plague. We can see the world as climate change and acidic oceans and dying fish and polluted landscapes. We can. Or we can choose to see heaven spread out upon the earth for us. It's a choice. I'm not saying that you can make the world better just by believing it's better. I'm saying it's better. You're not looking. So that's the reading for today. Climbing Maya, an exploration into success, my hand's a little wet from the cup, is available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook on Amazon, iTunes, Audible, Barnes & Noble, you name it. If it's online, it's probably there. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back with the second half of Chapter 7 really soon. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others. Let's make this world a better place. And there you have it. You've just survived another Ken LaSalle video. For more information about new releases, projects in the works, or even stuff from the archives, head on down to kenlasalle.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and all around social media, just as long as it's called Facebook or Twitter. Thanks for your support, as always. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll be back soon with more nonsense.